All right, this is the Big Douglas Show. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Big Pooh is with us today, and our guest from The Athletic is David Aldridge. David, thanks for hopping on with us today.
Of course, my pleasure, fellas.
Super excited about this one, David. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time as a young journalism student. We can say back when, but I'm curious. You've been a writer, and you've done TV work with TNT, and now with The Athletic, it's an online only thing, kind of brand new to the game when it started. I'm curious the difference and what you like about each one, maybe.
Well, Doug, I always, even when I was on TV, I always said I was a writer who was on television. There's something to be said for television. It is it is a more powerful medium than print, to be sure. There's nothing, TV goes through you. Like, you can read a word on a page and have a reaction to what you're reading, but you have a physical reaction to what you see on television. It's just, it's, I don't know what it is about the medium. It's so pervasive. So TV's an incredibly powerful medium. So people who are good on television tend to be really successful, because once you're good on TV, you can pretty much convince anybody of anything. You know what I mean? So I love television. Well, I should say I liked television. I love writing. That's just how I express myself. It's how I've expressed myself my entire life. I'm a person that tends to kind of observe and then say, this is what I think about what I just saw. And so that is much more in line with writing than it is with TV. And I can take more time. I can get the words right. Words are important to me. I want to get them right, so I can edit myself and have other people help me through the editing process. So I think I prefer writing to TV as much as I understand and respect the medium of television.
David, I too, like Doug, I'm a longtime fan.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So this is definitely an honor for me and for both of us having you on. My question is, what inspired you to get into journalism, and what has kept you here so long?
Well, it was a series of things. Like, I grew up in DC, and I grew up in the 70s. So I read the Post every day, and every day there was another story from these two guys named Woodward and Bernstein about the president. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, wow, these two guys, they're going, they have as much power as the president does. Like, that was a revelation to me. Like, all this stuff is happening because of these stories these guys are writing. And it's not that I wanted to be a political writer, because I never really did, but I realized the power of journalism. Like, if you find out stuff that's important, you can change the course of the country and the history, right? So that's what kind of got me kind of thinking about it a little bit. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while, because I really thought I was going to be like a high school history teacher. That's really what I thought I was going to do with my life. I love history. I love explaining things to people, or at least what my interpretation of what happened to people. And I thought I'd be a history teacher. And then when I was in college, I went to American here in DC. And so when I went to college, I got on the school paper and started thinking about journalism again. But it wasn't sports. I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll be either like a local writer, write about like city council and stuff like that, or write about crime or whatever. I never thought it was going to be sports. That was a series of accidents, which I can go into excruciating detail about if you want. But that's I wound up, it was really not what I was expecting to go into sports. And I wound up going into sports. And I've always told people, like, if you're on deadline, like back in the old days when I was working for the Post, you had a certain amount of time to write a story, right? So if you had to be done by 11:30, let's say at night, you're covering a game ends at 10:15. You have to have your story written by 11:30. It has to be done. They can't wait. They can't hold the paper for you. They're going to publish it without you. So your story's got to be done. And so you have an hour to summarize what you just saw over those last 2.5 hours, and talk to people in the locker room and try to find out what the story was that night. And that's not for everybody. Everybody can't be that quick in that turnaround, and that's that's when I fell in love with it, because I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. Just the idea of, I have to get this done. Like there's no makeup exam. They're not going to be understanding. If I blow deadlines, they're going to fire me. Like I need to get this done. And that really kind of roused me to like fall in love with it. So I've been in love with it ever since. Just the whole notion of covering the best athletes in the world doing what they're doing. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. I haven't found anything like it. Like it's just it's remarkable just to watch. Somebody, a great basketball player, or a great quarterback, or a great pitcher. I get jazzed when I go to a Nats game and watch Scherzer pitch. I go to when the football team played the Buccaneers, I got jazzed watching Tom Brady go to work. I mean, he was amazing. And I love telling stories like that, and I still do.
David, you're from DC. I'm curious where you think DC kind of ranks when you start putting sports towns together. Everybody thinks they've got the best town when it comes to sports, but really from high school all the way up to the pros, DC is wrought with talent. I'm curious where you think we stand as a fan base.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, there's different fan bases. Like, I would not rank DC with cities like New York or Philly or Chicago or Detroit that are kind of lunatic fans. You know what I mean? Like there's no rational fans, and there's very few rational fans in those cities. Like they're all in, like their teams are the best and you suck and everybody else sucks. And, so you can't, they're different. It's just a different level of, and it's not one that I particularly care for, just because I think it's irrational, and I understand fans are irrational generally, but most fans that I know are realistic about their team, right? Whether they like them or not. Like you could love the team that was a losing team, but they're still your team, right? So I like that. So I would say DC is a very strong sports town, very strong. Like you mentioned, the high school, especially with basketball, has been strong since I was a kid. Going back to the early '80s. The high school's always been, and it's not just like one league or one team. It's strong throughout. Like the public schools in DC and Virginia and Maryland are strong. The private schools are strong. The Catholic schools are strong. All of them. They're all good. So they've been good. The college scene's been pretty good in basketball for a very long time, with Georgetown and Maryland certainly leading the way over the years. The pro teams have had their ups and downs, certainly. But recently they've won, the Nats won the World Series 2 years ago. The Caps won the Stanley Cup 3 years ago. The Mystics won the WNBA 2 years ago. So, I mean, it's pretty strong. I think this is a pretty good sports town. I think it's mature, to be sure. The old joke when I was at the Post was that there's only 30,000 hockey fans in the whole area, and 20,000 of them go to the game. So, that we used to believe that. We know that's obviously not true anymore, right? So, so it's mature, and the Nats coming to town really, I think, helps solidify it, because you need baseball. You got to have a baseball team, I think, in your town to really be in the discussion about, a good sports town. I think you need a baseball team, because baseball's such a long season. Like you really have to pay attention to know how a team's doing over 6 months. So I think DC is a very, very strong sports town, compared to just about any other city in the country. I mean, I certainly, I'm thinking about Dallas and cities like that, and LA and San Francisco and Denver, St. Louis. I think DC more than holds its own with all those cities.
David, you mentioned it, and while we can't particularly tell with our NBA team in DC, but
right.
The DC area is a very strong basketball area.
Yeah.
Can you just explain to people how in love with hoops the DMV area is? Because judging from the NBA team, you would never know.
Well, it has the NBA team has a part in it, but it's a long time ago, right? So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I've always thought people get it wrong, because the football team was so good for a long time that people think this is a football town, and I keep telling them people this is not a football town. There's no other football team. It's not like there's crazy college football in DC. There's not. I mean, Maryland occasionally is okay, and that's about it, but they've struggled to be good. The high school scene, there's a few good teams, but it's not like you can go to any part of the area and you're going to find a good football team. That's not true, but in basketball, again, if you go back, like when I was growing up, I went to DeMatha, and the Catholic League was great. You had great teams. I saw Johnny Dawkins play when he was 14 years old at Mackin. I saw great players at Carroll. Derek Lewis, who went on to play at Maryland, had a great career at Maryland, played for Carroll. St. John's had really good teams. But so did the public schools in DC. You know what I mean? And they had just as long a history. Spingarn had Dave Bing, who was in the Hall of Fame in the NBA in the 60s. You know what I mean? They've had an incredible history. Dunbar has an incredible history with basketball going back 50 years to when they were great players. Elgin Baylor played in DC. You know what I mean? He's a Hall of Famer. He played here in high school. He played for Western High School, which is now Duke Ellington School of the Arts. So the history of basketball in this town is deep, and then you add the colleges with Maryland and Lefty, in the late 60s, making that a national program. Then John Thompson comes in, makes Georgetown a national program, wins a national championship, gets to the final game 3 times in 4 years with Patrick Ewing. Maryland wins a chip with Gary Williams. I mean, even, go to UDC, which was Division II. They won a national championship the same year Georgetown won a national championship in Division I. With the late great Will Jones, and Will Jones is one of the greatest players who ever played at my alma mater, American University. So it just keeps going. It keeps rolling in on itself. This history here is deep history, and even the Wizards, even though they haven't been relevant for a long time, in the 70s they made 4 NBA finals. So they were one of the best teams in basketball for a decade. That's really hard to do. So. It's just the history of hoops in this town is I think as good as any in the country.
We'll get to the Wizards, but while we've got you here, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Barcelona, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yes, it was. Yeah. I was there for the Dream Team. It's the one time I demanded to cover a story.
Yeah, I bet.
I went to my boss's office in the fall of '91, and I said, I don't care what you tell me, I'm covering the Dream Team. Now I can either cover it for this paper or I'll cover it for somebody else.
Right.
And he happily said, okay, you're on it. It's your beat. And, let me go. It was unbelievable. I can't even describe how good they were. It was my favorite stat from that Olympic team is Chris Mullin. And I'm not exaggerating. Chris Mullin, you can go look it up. Chris Mullin shot 75% on 3-pointers in the Olympics. He shot 75% on threes. That's how good that team was. You know what I mean? So it was amazing. It was amazing watching how people reacted to them and watching how they played. It's different. They were so much better than everybody else. And it wouldn't be that way now because the rest of the world's caught up. But back then, the U.S. team was head and shoulders above everybody else. The only team that could have given them a game is if the Yugoslavia team had stayed together. Yugoslavia team had Kukoc and Petrovic and Dino Radja. They had some really good players on that team. But Yugoslavia broke up. They broke up and they went into 2 teams. They were good,
okay,
but not great. If they had stayed together, they would have been great, but they didn't. So the U.S. team was far better than anybody else. So they played, you just wanted to see, they were playing against basketball. I've always said that. They weren't playing against whatever team they were playing against the game. How good can we be? How efficient, how devastating can one basketball team be? And it was spectacular. They were as good as you can imagine. I think the average margin of victory was 46 points. It was devastating. They were devastating. That was my first Olympics. I got to cover wrestling and volleyball and some other stuff too. That was a lot of fun. in Barcelona is breathtaking with beautiful country, a city and a beautiful country. And it was one of the highlights of my career for sure. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I always felt it was a crime that Isaiah Thomas wasn't on that team. That was
Yeah.
And Shaq
Like-
should have been on that one too.
Like Isaiah said, I met the criteria. I could have been on the team, but I wasn't. That's what he said in the last day. I think that's, yeah, you're right. You're right. You should have been on the team, but you
should have been on the team. This Olympics, Tokyo Olympics, Bradley Beal finally gets to represent Team USA. How do you think that's going to play out? Not necessarily on the court for him, but just the recruiting that goes on
that's
by
real.
players.
Yeah. No question. That's real. And
during the
it'll be
Olympic
fascinating.
time.
I will be fascinated to see how Bradley Beal does the recruiting. He's going to be recruited. We all understand that. But what's wrong with Bradley Beal saying, hey, why don't you come to DC and play with me? You know what I'm saying? Like you can do that too. You know what I'm saying? So I've always felt that there were 3 cities that if they ever got their team right, people would flock to come and play there. The 3 cities were, I'm not making this up, Golden State, Atlanta, and Washington. Because guys love to go to Atlanta, guys love to come to DC, guys love to go out to the Bay. They love it. They just have the best time out there. They do whatever, whatever guys are into, guys are into whatever they're into, but they love doing it here. And I know that because you can tell how badly, if you see a game played at a 1 o'clock game on a Saturday or Sunday,
That's right.
The fellas had a good time the night before because they lose by 30 every time. Iverson would come here, I swear to God, Philly would come here and lose by 30 every game. They would schedule Philly to come play the Wizards at 1 o'clock on Saturday or 1 o'clock on Sunday. And Iverson would be like 4 for 28. You know what I'm saying? They would lose. Because guys like coming here. They have a good time here. So there's nothing saying Bradley Beal can't be aggressive and saying, to whomever. I know there's talk about Lillard being unhappy in Portland. Well, Dame, why don't you come to DC? Come play with me in DC. Or I don't know if Tatum's going to leave Boston, but you can recruit. Recruiting goes both ways, is what I'm saying. It doesn't have to just be, I don't want to be with these Wizards anymore. Bradley Beal can say, why don't you come play with me and we can win a championship here. So I'll be fascinated to see how that works.
Tommy Shepard is a grinder and a lifer.
Yeah.
How does the league see him? How do you see him?
I think Tommy's done a really good job. I didn't know that was going to be the case when he got the job because he'd never done it before, so you can only judge people by what they do when you see them do it. Right. So he has, taken a very difficult situation because you can't lose, what John Wall was their franchise player and they lost him. He got hurt and he can't play anymore. Not at that level. And that's hard to come back from. You don't just recover from that in 6 months. And so they not tore it down, but they decided that they were going to play young guys 2 years ago and see what they could come up with and develop, and thought they did a decent job of that. And then, this past year they got Russell Westbrook, and Russell, I knew Russell was good still. I didn't know if he was good. I don't know if he could be great again. You just don't know because you haven't seen him. And he was great. He was great this year. Now, can he do that again next year? I don't know. But I know he did it this year. So I think Tommy's done a really good job. I think the fact that they haven't had a top 5 lottery pick, it makes it very difficult to get the draft right because, you have a better chance of being right with a higher pick. Hachimura has shown signs this year that he could be a decent player. Abdia got hurt, so you can't really tell much from his rookie year. But I think Tommy's done as good a job as you could expect, given they don't really have much cap room. They haven't had a really high draft pick, and yet the team managed to get into the playoffs this year. Now I get it. Look, I said they should trade Bradley 2 years ago. I wanted them to start over. I wanted them to trade Bradley, get a bunch of draft picks, be bad for 2 or 3 years, get top 3, top 4 picks, and then see what you got. They didn't do that. They made the playoffs last year. So we'll see. This is a huge summer for Tommy and for the team because he's got to add another great player or Bradley's going to walk. That's the bottom line. Bradley's going to walk. He can be a free agent after next year. They got to add another dynamic player and win big next year. When I say big, I mean like 50 win big to keep Bradley here. I think that's my opinion. I'm not saying that's reporting. That's just my opinion.
David, I know there's been roundtables on The Athletic discussing not possible, but where the Wizards should go as far as their next head coach. Where do you think, or what do you think they should be looking for in their next head coach?
I think if you're going to continue on this path, which is we're going to try and continue to build around Beal and now Westbrook, right? It's going to be hard, not impossible. It's going to be hard to bring in a first-time head coach, I think. As much as I would love for them to hire Wes Unseld Jr., because I just think he's got all of the things you want in a head coach. And I think he could really be a big time kind of the same way Rivera came in with the football team and just kind of changed everything. I think Wes Jr. could do that here. I think really do. He's that kind of guy. He commands respect. He's not a yeller, not a screamer, but players respect him. But I can see them saying, well, we got to make sure that we have a guy that really that's done it before and that the veterans on this team are going to respect immediately and they're not going to challenge him. So I get that. So if you told me they were going to bring in, Mike D'Antoni, if they were going to bring in Kenny Atkinson, or if they're going to bring in Terry Stotts or somebody like that has been a head coach, yeah, I could live with that. But I love Wes Jr. I think he's a good fit. I would not bring someone like Becky Hammond in, first-time coach. She's going to have to deal with so much wherever she goes. It's just, I don't think this is the right kind of team for her. I think she should be with a young team that's rebuilding, like Orlando would make sense to me for her. That's a young team. Their expectations are, we want to develop this group. It's not, we want to win 50 games and make the Eastern Conference Finals next year. And I think that would be better for any first-time head coach, but I think she will have an additional burden that's obvious that male coaches aren't going to have. And so she's going to have to be in the place that gives her the best chance to succeed.
Whoever they get, I hope they bring a defensive mentality with them, because I swear he's at the bottom of the barrel defensively for, I don't know, pick a year. They were better the second half of this year, but you're right. I mean, they were not a good defensive team under Scott Brooks for most of his time here. And that was part of the problem, to be point blank. They just were not good enough defensively. And a coach has to come in and demand, there's a young, and again, first time head coach, but I don't, so I don't know if they would bring him in, but Jamal Mosley from Dallas, I think would be another guy that could come in, hold the vets accountable, and still, be young enough that he could grow with and help develop the young guys. And Dallas does an excellent job of player development down there. So, but you're right. They got to get better defensively, no matter who the coach is. You can't just accept giving up 130 points a game just because the other team's capable. You got to try and stop them. You have to have people that talk and communicate. Gafford helped for sure when they got him. And that's another great move that Tommy Shepard made, turning a guy that wasn't playing at all and Troy Brown into a guy that's going to be a big part of their future in Daniel Gafford. But talking about Troy Brown as a sore spot around here, because we were hoping he'd get more minutes.
Dude, look, that's one of the things I didn't understand about Scott. And I like Scott as a person. He's a good guy. But if you draft a guy in the first round, he's supposed to be part of your rotation. You got to find out if he can play or not. You got to give him minutes and give him a year or two and see if he blossoms. I was always told they'll tell you in year three. Year three, they'll tell you if they belong here or not. If they haven't told you by year three, they're not ever going to tell you. You know what I mean? And I think that's generally true for non-superstar players, right? Obviously LeBron was great from minute one, right? So we knew that. That's an easy one. But a guy like Troy Brown that that isn't easy, that you may have to like take some time to really see. I don't think they ever did that here. Now, to their credit, they moved on. And again, I think Gafford will help this team next year. But yeah, I agree with you. We were all like, what is he doing? Like he doesn't never play him, and then he plays him 30 minutes and then doesn't play him for 2 weeks. It was weird.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the next coach definitely, well, one, him and Tommy better be on the same page.
Yeah, right.
The next coach need to definitely take the time to develop the younger players, so we know, you know what you have. Like, you know what you have in Avdia, you know what you have in whoever they'll be drafting this year. So David, I like to pivot to the football team. Brought them up a few times as we getting close to that time of year of training camp. What are your expectations for the Washington football team this season after the year they had in the off season? And
I mean, I'm not usually optimistic, but
we're in a group that way,
right? You know, but I must say, like, I think you could be optimistic this year. Like, my guess is, like, it's always about the quarterback. I get that. Yeah, of course, it's always about the quarterback. My guess is that they will get decent play out of either Fitzpatrick or Heineke enough weeks that they should win more games than lose. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying they're going to throw for 6,000 yards and 60 touchdowns. What I'm saying is they won't lose a game. Like, they're not going to throw 3 picks. Now, that may happen once or twice with Fitzpatrick, but it's not going to happen every week. You know what I mean? Like, most weeks, I think he's going to be decent. And I think if he's not, I think Heineke, like, oh no, he looked awfully good in that playoff game.
He did.
You know what I mean? Like,
and he's developed a following too.
He looked awfully comfortable in that game.
He's got a following of people that want him playing too. Believe me, they beat me up on Twitter all the time.
All I'm saying is, like, young guys tend to not play well in playoff games. They struggle. It's hard because it's pressure. This is, you know, you play all season. You got the vets. Vets want to win. You want to win. And young guys in every sport tend to not play well in the postseason. And in the biggest game against Tom Brady, this guy balled out. I mean, he was throwing darts and running. And all I'm saying is, you might want to take another look. That's all I'm saying. And maybe it was a one-time wonder and it'll never happen again. But I might want to take a look at young fella in a couple of regular season games this year. So I think that they'll be okay. I think they got a chance to be good. The defense should be really good. I mean,
it feels a little different this time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're all on the same page now. Year 2 with Del Rio, they know what he wants to do, and they do it the way he wants to do it. You know, I don't know. We'll find out about Davis. I mean, it's an adjustment playing in the pros. It might take him a while. But I think one of the most underrated things that very few people talk about is they're getting Ioannidis back. Ioannidis might have been the best defensive lineman the last 2 years. You know, I mean, just doing everything, like stopping the run and rushing the passer. He was really good. And they get him back to add to the group they had last year. You know, Curl plays a full year now, you know, in this system. And you know, I don't know how it's going to work with Landon Collins. I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I think that defense has a chance. And they signed Jackson, who's by all accounts a really good cornerback. So I think that defense has a chance to, like, dominate. You know, that would be my expectation, is that should be a top 5 level defense this year. And then now offensively, I think they've added enough weapons. You know, Samuel's going to help a lot, I think, you know, kind of diversifying the offense and doing different things. And, I think he'll help McLaurin just because they'll have to, for the first time, actually cover the other guy on the other side of the field. You know, so that'll help. Gibson had a great rookie year. I mean, if he can stay healthy, there's no reason to expect that he won't have a good second year. I like bringing in Leno on the offensive line. He's a solid left tackle. He started a bunch of games in Chicago. You know, we'll see about Cosme. I don't know. You know, you don't know until they get out there and play. We'll see. But I think they have a chance. I do. I think they have a chance to be really good. Now, the schedule is brutal. It's brutal. But they have a chance, I think, to be, a legit 10, 11 win team if they can stay healthy. It is all with football, it's always injuries. That's the only thing that matters is how healthy you are at the end of the year. If you're not healthy, you have no chance.
Yeah, particularly this year with the extra game.
Right, right, exactly.
If you've said it before, I haven't heard it. I'm curious your thoughts on this 2-year name change process. Do you have do you have one that is your favorite, or are you just ready for it to stick a name on there?
Honestly,
and move along?
You know what? I'm not real. I like Red Tails because of the military historic connotation. That was fine. I didn't mind that. But if they want to get away from that, it's fine with me. I mean, as long as they don't come up with some stupid name like the Squirrels or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, but yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't mind Washington football team. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of,
I think it's going to stay
different, I don't mind that. If they kept that, I wouldn't mind it. Yeah, but if they want to change it to something else, okay, as long as it's not kitschy and dumb,
Yeah, I think we've all grown accustomed to the Washington football team at this point.
Yeah, right. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It sounds decent, right?
The color stayed the same. That was the important.
The color stayed the same, exactly. Yeah. So I would have no problem
once they start spending money on it, once they started spending money on the Washington football team sign.
Right. Yeah.
People don't like throwing money away.
No, that's true. That's true. And there's equity in it now because it was successful last year. So it's not like they changed the name and they were 1-15 and everybody hates them again. You know what I mean? Like, people actually like the team now. So, you may stick with that because people like your product now for the first time in 20 years,
Absolutely. David Aldridge, we thank you once again.
Sure.
We're honored to have you on. We thank you. We don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, anytime. I know I talk way too much on these.
Oh, no. We love it. I can listen to the stories all day. Like I said, I've been reading, you when you were in the Post or at the Post, excuse me.
Yeah.
And all the way up to now at the Athletic. So
well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. And seriously, anytime you have me on, I'd be happy to come back.
Thank you. Just let the people know where they can find you online. I mean, obviously they can find you at the Athletic.
Yeah.
Where they can find you online.
At the Athletic. I think it's a really good product. I mean, I would say that even if I didn't work there, just because I think for $5 a month or $6 a month, whatever we're charging now, you get an awful lot of content. I can't read it all. So if you're like a sports fan, you just love all sports, I mean, it's pretty good. So, I mean, I'm on there. Check out the DC page. I'm usually writing something about one of the local teams. Or right now, this time of year, I'm writing about the NBA playoffs a lot. So I try to do both. I like doing both. I like to write about the league because I love the league, but I also like writing about the Nats and the football team. I don't write about the Caps just because nobody cares what I have to say about hockey. I get that. That's fine. So, but baseball, football, I try to stay on top of a little bit more, as well as the basketball. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good product. We have a great staff here in DC. And, if you haven't given us a shot, take a look at it. Just take a look. I think you'll like it.
You basically give it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to me, it's like, okay, it's literally one less trip to Starbucks per month. That's what it is. Like, if you decided I'm just going to brew a pot today, and then for that, once a month, I can read the Athletic. I mean, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Absolutely, more than worth it. I've had it for 2 years now. It's more than worth it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you all. Thank you for having me, and man, good luck to you guys. It's a good pod, and I enjoy talking to you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, David.
Okay, you guys too.